someone has a speaker on.
Okay, whoever's local and is on, can you mute, please? Did you join using the full?
I joined when I'm muting. I just left because it's not muting for some reason.
You need to mute your computer, not the mute.
Yeah,
Oh.
muting my computer.
Join the join the on-site button, and it won't give you video
Or audio.
or audio. Yeah,
Yes.
it's a different button on Data Tracker.
Okay. Let's get started.
All right. Yes, let's get started. Welcome. This is the SCIM session, IETF 124. Before we get started, quick reminder of the new note well on the screen here. Make sure you're familiar with it if you are not already. And meeting tips, if you are in the room, please make sure you've joined the session either on a computer or on your phone. Use the on-site or Meet Echo Lite client, and that will give you no video or audio, and you can join the queue that way to participate. If you're remote, you are already there. So use the little hand button at the bottom to join the queue if you would like to chime in on any of the discussions here. If you are remote, please keep your video and audio off unless you are actively presenting or discussing, just to keep things clean here. And for everybody, please do remember to speak your name first before you are at the mic with your comment, so we know who you are. And I believe Pam has already volunteered to take notes for the session.
And Danny's on there.
And Danny, remote, thank you very much. And we will also have, of course, the AI minutes to fill in the gaps, but those are, yeah, no, those are not official. But I will review the AI minutes and see if there's anything useful in there that we need to combine. I think that's it for the logistics. Oh yes, we did that already. Quick update on the document statuses that have been in progress. Cursor pagination is now RFC 9865. We're done. Yay. And then there are two more in the RFC editor queue right now. So SCIM device model and the SCIM profile for security event tokens.
So there's been a lot of activity. Elliot, I haven't seen much activity, so I'm presuming the device model is moving, sitting in the queue. I mean, I think we're done. It's just sitting in the in the publishing queue. Get it out, Nancy. And the SCIM events should almost be there because Phil has been churning. And so we're very close to the finish line on those two drafts. Yep.
Great. So quick agenda for today. We have 4 documents to cover today. So we have about 10 or 15 minutes each. We're going to try to keep this on track. So if you are presenting, please try to save a couple minutes at the end for questions about your draft. And yeah, I believe some of the presenters are remote. So make sure that
So Christy, I think, is not. They are having issues coming in. I don't think they're registered.
probably means they didn't register yet.
Yeah.
That's
So I just responded.
okay.
To them, but they're last. So we
Yeah,
can
so we have
continue
time.
and I'll keep watching.
Okay. Great. So I will hand over the slide control to our first presenter, Unmesh, for roles and entitlements.
Hey guys, so I can switch the slides, I'm assuming?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just give you the little button.
Okay.
And then you should have forward and back buttons on your screen
Yep,
now.
I can see it.
Great.
All right. Thanks. I'll start. Hi, everybody. My name is Unmesh. I'm an architect at Okta. And today I wanted to just give a quick walk through this SCIM roles and entitlements extension, which was originally published by Danny, and we did revive it I think, a few months ago with help of Aaron, because we are working on very similar problems. So this slide deck is just meant to give you overview of all the changes we are proposing. Um, Here's a quick agenda. What we're changed, if anybody has reviewed the earlier draft from Danny, what we have changed in this draft is there are only very minimal changes. So we did um, update the new sub attributes. Some of them were marked as required, so we did change them to optional, specifically the sub attributes under roles and entitlements. Included the role and entitlement resource schema. Again, included ID attribute as an optional attribute, was because we did see that several service providers, SCIM service providers, do have uh, identifiers associated with the roles and entitlements. So just using unique IDs that are unique and immutable, that uh, simplifies SCIM clients' use cases. The new earns, please review these. Happy to get any feedback on naming suggestions if you have any. And also really just brushed up some of the role and entitlement resource and sample responses for users. So the main motivation, this is carrying forward from the original draft itself, was we didn't have a good schema to go with for role and entitlement attributes. So which means for SCIM client, there wasn't a deterministic way for us to work with these roles and entitlements from SCIM clients. And that made our governance use cases and provisioning use cases a little bit difficult. So we are trying to solve that by providing making role and entitlement resources, publish them through role and entitlements endpoints, and therefore we now have a schema to work with. So here's a brief look at the role resource schema. It includes just the default fields, including the ID as the optional attribute. And it also contains, optionally, you can include licensing counts, or you can include your role hierarchies if they exist. Those are, again, all optional attributes. And similarly, the entitlement resource schema also looks very similar. As I said earlier, please review the earns. That's going to be very useful. This is one change we are recommending to the service provider config. We should include role and entitlements attribute as a new attribute. And that allows you to publish, like for my service provider, do I support roles, or do I support entitlements, or do I support both? And are these roles primary? Are types supported for these roles? And those details are included in the draft. So the new SCIM workflow from a client perspective is the client will query the service provider config to identify which roles and entitlements to fetch. And based on the supported endpoints, we can fetch role and entitlement resources and then correlate these values when we fetch users or update users through patch or post or put attributes, put operations. That's basically it. I covered it in 5 minutes. There's a link for the draft, and happy to answer any questions.
Hello, it's Elliot. Thank you for the draft. Question, you used the term user there quite a number of times. Do you see this as applying to devices as well?
So this is an extension for our user schema and users role and resources schema, role and entitlement schema. I haven't reviewed the devices schema, but I think we should definitely review it to see if we can include roles or entitlements for devices too.
Okay, this leads me to just one additional question, which is how are issues being tracked for the draft?
Aaron?
So we did create a GitHub. So Danny, if this was your original draft, I believe you put it in the Git. Let me double check.
Yes.
So the short answer of it, Elliot, is we should be tracking, and and the draft should be tracked through the SCIM Oregon Git. Let me see if I can find it and I'll put it in the,
It is actually linked from the data tracker page to the GitHub already. Yep. Yeah, Pam.
Hello, Pam Dingle. The last thing you talked about, the roles and entitlements support object inside of the service provider config.
Mhm.
I'm just interested to know what you were thinking about. It's a complex type and it's quite complex. I mean, if you could give us an idea of some of the deep detail that you need in there, like whether or not the type value is included in the role, like that seems like a lot of
Yeah.
complexity to have in what would usually normally just be an array or a Boolean.
Yeah, that's a valid question. We did include all the configuration options we could think of under roles and entitlements, and that's why it was combined as a one single configuration object. Now, in terms of, sorry, I think, can I open this link here in the draft link, or that doesn't work in the
No,
slide share?
no, it's just sharing the slides.
Okay. s- did you have,
It's hard
Pamela,
to
did you have
discuss
any
without seeing it,
specific
right?
feedback in terms of how to reorganize this? We can
Unmesh,
definitely.
there should be a way for you, if you want to share something, you could request to share whatever application it is and we can grant you access.
Got
Yeah,
it.
I can have it in front of me and ask specific questions if that'll help, but I'm also happy to just seed the room and we can talk about it in more detail after.
Yeah, I mean, or you can bring the questions on the mail list. I'm just
Yeah,
watching the
yeah.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Danny, you're on the queue.
Yeah, I had similar thoughts to Pam on, I guess, the current model that exists in SCIM today for either the roles or the entitlements attribute, or really most of the like complex core schema attributes, is not particularly, I think, well suited for access management. And by that I mean, either roles or entitlements are made up. It's a complex object with ID, or sorry, not ID, with value, display, type, and primary. And that like sort of works for something like an array of emails, but for a role or an entitlement, what I've seen across the, I don't know, a couple hundred SCIM like service provider implementations I've taken a look at over the years, the ones that have implemented roles, which is like almost nobody implements entitlements, but they really only use the value sub attribute. Type doesn't get consistently used. Like there's not, I don't know, like concrete examples in the existing spec. The different IDPs out there that operate, the major clients that everybody's integrating with, don't, I guess, consistently implement it. Like everybody has sort of their own take on it and like wildly different interpretations. And the I think one thing that I wanted to, I guess, add on top of that is I've seen a couple of drafts get published to the data tracker in the past, I don't know, few months that for, I don't know, AI agents and whichever else, that include roles and entitlements, and they sort of just make a mention of, these values or these attributes copy the format of roles and entitlements on the user in, the core SCIM schema. And it's not really working well for the current use case. And I think that existing are like new authors of these drafts that are mostly going to be talked about in this meeting should be very cautious about just trying to, copy and paste that structure that doesn't really work well today, and when it's probably not going to work well for the other use cases either. And with that, I cede the floor.
Okay, so we're out of time. My suggestion is we could do either or both because there seem to be similar comments between Danny and Pam. So you could put it to the mail list You could do a pull request. You could do both. Because that way we can track it as an issue as well. Make sense?
Okay. Yep.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks. With that,
Thank you.
SCIM agent.
Yes. Great. There we go. Over to you, Macy.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron. Hey, everyone. I'm Macy Abbey. I'm an architect at Okta. I'm going to briefly put together a draft proposal for agents and agentic applications in SCIM. Just I'm going to go through why do this proposal at all, what's an agent, in kind of agent v user comparison as far as known SCIM attributes and newly proposed attributes, what's an agentic application, and then the final call to action for feedback and collaboration. So why SCIM? It's because history is kind of repeating itself. And I thought this image was pretty funny that Gemini generated, if you really look at it closely. The dad and crying child also repeats itself. So what do I mean by that? It's people in this room, I'm sure know, as some of you wrote this, or at least have read it many, many times, SCIM for users was proposed to address an abundance of complex standards for user information. And SCIM was invented to simplify it and lower the burden on implementers of the service provider client. And a similar situation is emerging with agents. So there is an abundance of protocols emerging with different adoption across the industry, different levels of complexity, all of which seem to have a component of cross-domain agent identity. So as a non-exhausted list, ACP has a bit about agent discovery, A2A has a bit about agent discovery, ANS has a bit about agent discovery, and agency also has a bit about how to declare a directory of agents. So it's basically the idea of this proposal is keep it simple. We already have a system protocol for cross-domain identities. Why not add a new type of identity to SCIM and maybe take some of the weight off of these emerging standards to solve the same problem a different way. Maybe decrease the burden on implementers in the industry. They could re-leverage implementations and trust relationships between SCIM clients and servers. For example, we could specify that the 8A protocol, a way to discover agents implementing the 8A standard is to find them on the service provider's SCIM server. So what's in the proposal? There's this new core schema proposed. I know I'm treading in unsafe waters trying to define what an agent is, and our industry is putting together a number of these definitions. What's in the draft, which is very open to feedback, is that an agent is a workload. It has its own identifier and privileges. And it's distinct enough from traditional software workloads that it should have its own type of identity. And then one of the pieces of feedback I got from the mailing list was why not use user or propose another schema that could be implemented in addition to user. So when we were looking at the user schema, there were a number of singular and multi-valued attributes in the user schema that seemed inappropriate for an agent for one reason or another. I'll go over those briefly. So for example, password, we're trying to get rid of those for humans. Definitely don't want to give them to agents. Name is more about human honorifics and like human names that doesn't really apply to a machine or an agent. Preferred language, maybe debatable, very open feedback on that. Locale, also maybe debatable. Time zone related, user type, the premise here is it's not a user, so not applicable. Nickname, maybe you'd want that for an agent, but left it out. And then profile URL, while I think there are URLs that are relevant for agents, profile and the intent for user didn't seem appropriate. And then the multi-valued attributes, emails, phone numbers, IMs, photos, addresses in the real world all seemed non-applicable to agents, which are at the end of the day machines. Similar attributes. So if you look in the proposal, you'll see these attributes included for agents as well. So display name, relevant, description, relevant, active, also relevant. And then multi-valued attributes included roles and entitlements, because it is very relevant to know what administrative roles this agent does or should have, as well as entitlements. Groups, I went back and forth on a bunch. I could see good arguments for not including that. And then X509 certificates seems extremely relevant, as those are often a preferred credential for an agent. And then if you look in the draft, there's proposed agent-only attributes. So agent name, agent type, subject, which is intended to act as what is the identifier that should be used to correlate to this agent if included in a token, as well as some complex multi-valued attributes like applications, protocols, parent, and owners. I can get into the details of those if I have time. Before the details, I just want to get into the idea of agentic application, which is also part of the draft. The idea of the application is that what we're seeing is for humans to interface with agents, the humans are interfacing with applications as we know them today, web, native, etc. But there are agents they're exposed to behind those applications. So the agentic application is a schema that is representing the agent that is containing, the applications that are containing various agents on the service provider. The real use case of why have this at all that we were thinking about was when you are, say, granting access to a human to access an application, it is very relevant to know what agents they may be getting access to as well. So having that relationship is useful information. And then just some example scenarios of real life cases where that information would be relevant. Let's say you've got an application like Writer. Writer is a SaaS application that actually provides many agents to users who interact with their application. So if Writer had a SCIM server and was implementing the specification, they may expose one agentic application themselves as self for the tenant, and then expose the zero or first or third party agents. And if you're identity provider with a SCIM server, then you may have expose a number of agentic applications on your SCIM server, and you would then expose the relationships of k different agents associated with one-to-many agentic applications. And it might be similar for agentic platforms. So let's say a company like Crew AI implemented a SCIM server. Might they represent their concept of Crew as an agentic application? Maybe, maybe not. But that is one way they could expose to SCIM clients that there was up to n agents associated with a single application. And finally, just very open to feedback and collaboration. Dr. Matthias Winter provided really detailed feedback from the working group. Really appreciate that. Working on a PR to incorporate his feedback. After I wrote this proposal, I found that Mark Polberg had a very similar proposal, and I'm really happy to see that he's presenting today as well. So would love to collaborate and not have duplicative SCIM extensions. And the proposal link is there, as well as the GitHub repository that it is published from.
Thank you. Elliot, and if anybody else has comments, make sure you add yourself to the queue.
Hey, thanks for this. We had initially talked about doing something like this through the devices schema, and I think this is much better. This is a much better approach. I think the document is a little loose in a number of places, and could be tightened up. A couple of areas. First of all, for any of the attributes, that it should be clear as to the semantic meaning of the values. And I think you're a little loosey-goosey on like saying, well, it could be this, could be that. You could add some more. Like for instance, the agent type is a good one where I think it probably needs a little tightening up. In the security area where we talk about X509 attributes, I think it should be clear as to how the attribute, X509 certificates, these should be pretty clear as to how those certificates are meant to be used, and is a full certificate actually needed? So this leads me to the next point, which is the term subject. I think is one of those that could be clarified. So for instance, a bunch of stuff you just may need the subject field of a certificate rather than the full certificate, so long as you understand who the issuer is, for instance. So there's like a little bit of work that, or I don't know if work is the right word, but certainly some issues to be addressed. Other than that, it looks like a pretty good beginning of work that I think this group should work on.
Thank you. Appreciate the feedback.
Peter.
Hey, hello. Peter Kasselman, de facto. Thank you for writing this draft. It's always great to see things like this appearing. One comment that struck me, you define a agent as a workload with unpredictable behavior, which I think is a pretty decent way to start. But I was kind of surprised to then see most of the properties or the nature of what you're describing being derived from the user attributes and things like that. And I'm kind of curious if you've given thought to maybe starting with defining what a workload or an application should look like and how that should be modeled, and then working your way from there rather than trying to superimpose human properties on what really isn't a human actor in your system. So just a thought, and maybe happy to discuss that more if you're interested.
Definitely. Thanks for the feedback.
Thanks. Danny.
Yeah, I think it's worth considering whether or not this draft or any other draft talking about the agentic identities needs to only be focused on agentic AI identities, or if it should maybe zoom out a little and cover just non-human identities or workload identities as a whole, and other like agentic identities that then become one like subset of what it covers.
Yep, makes a lot of sense, and it's the same theme as fighters.
Hi, Max Gerber Stitch, echoing what the last two said. I can see a lot of use cases for this for implementations that don't have an LLM or generative AI in the mix. And so I'm questioning the use of the word agent, but I do like the proposal.
Cool. Thanks for the feedback, Max.
Thanks. Great timing. Any last comments or feedback? Otherwise, we will move on. Okay. Oh, and Pam, are you presenting?
Yes, I am.
Great. Okay. Let's.
I wasn't sure when you said channeling.
And I'm super excited to get to go second. That last one was a great proposal. I didn't want to waste time giving comments when I was going to get up and speak anyway, but I thought it was fantastic. So, and I have talked to Mark and we're definitely interested in collaborating. So my name is Pam Dingle. I work for Microsoft and I am not Mark Wall. Also, it is Wall and not Wahlberg. And also you can tell because of the beard and the briefcase, if none of you have met Mark. Mark was one of the original spec editors of the LDAP specification. So he does kind of have that rock star feel about him in some ways. So, okay, let's go quick so we can have lots of discussion. So the lens that at least I'm bringing in interpreting what Mark wrote is slightly different than what you just heard, but I think very complementary. We are really taking an enterprise look towards SCIM, and that is partly because pre-existing relationships in enterprises are very strong, whether those are federation relationships, provisioning relationships, or other. Many enterprises already have very, very strong contractual relationships with certain types of vendors. Now, those vendors, so what I'm describing here is not true of all enterprises, and it is certainly not true of all software in any enterprise. But it is true of some very big, very important relationships that exist in enterprises. So some of these are really important. Some of the ones that I don't hear talked about frequently are things like the portability question. So if you decide you want to change your infrastructure out and you have a series of agents affiliated with an old vendor that you're now going to try to replace with a new vendor, there's a portability requirement here that's very important. You have to be able to move batches of agents in and out, right? So that batch bulk kind of processing matters. Also, being able to do things like update and delete are very important. The other one I did not mention on that last slide is we have to be able to attach governance workflows in some kinds of enterprises. We do, there are cases where approvals might need to happen or where secondary audit processes might also need to happen. So these are the kinds of things that we're thinking about when we're thinking about especially registration and management of agents. So the only other thing is that the opportunity we have right now, and I think there was an earlier question about why not just non-human identities, why are agents so special? But I do think that some of this is that there is no other place, at least right now, where there's a big picture view, and SCIM provides an interface that has some of those controls already built in for that big picture view. The difference, I think, is that SCIM has often been used to populate dashboards or populate reports or to populate things that humans look at. And I think that now this is going to go deeper into the automation realm, where a lot of this stuff is going to be more programmatically accessed, more programmatically processed and analyzed. So I think that will be a slightly different thing. So that brings us to the actual specification. The goal of this specification really is about defining a new resource type, which is an agentic identity. So one of the big differences between this proposal and the one that you just heard about is that this is one resource type called an agentic identity. I believe the previous proposal has two resource types. an agentic application, an agentic identity. So I think that will be a good conversation for this group to have. And part of the reason we think that this interface works very well and is complementary to existing other protocols is because you can do things like add roles, like add entitlements, add agents to groups, and other things that are just natural things to have happen. They're already built in to the SCIM interface. Here's what it would look like. So here's an example of adding an OAuth, an agent, and then modifying that SCIM object in order to add the agent to a group. So that's sort of very, very restful, obviously, because of SCIM. The other thing that I think is interesting here, that is interesting for this group, is this OAuth client identifiers attribute, multi-valued attribute. If you think about what client ID metadata documents bring, that is really quite new, it is this idea of binding the agent identifier to a domain, right, or to a domain location. And so being able to, that's something that SCIM has been dealing with for a long time with external ID, the question of who does issue that identifier and who is authoritative for that identifier. Being able to be affiliated to multiple OAuth client IDs may be valuable. I don't think we've had enough experience to know for sure one way or the other. Sorry, this is the example I was thinking of, right? So this is just simply acting, in this case, it's a push, acting to post to agentic identities in order to create a new resource or a new object, and then being able to patch that object and delete that object all over time. And then lastly, as I said, I think this is complementary to existing agent registration, but I think it's really important for us to talk about who's implementing, why they're implementing, and which delivers what. The middle row here is the client ID metadata document. And I don't know if I have the values right here. So if I have them wrong, hopefully someone will say so. But from my perspective, the client ID metadata document is incredibly powerful. But at least as of now, it's the trigger for fetching the document is, as far as I can see, through MCP quite frequently. And so that trigger of how do I know when it's been modified, does it even matter if it's been deleted, is I think something we have to discuss. Whereas SCIM has those concepts already. And as far as DCR, or dynamic client registration, there is an RFC 7591 and a 7592. They are, if you think 7591 hasn't been implemented, then 7592 is, I think, worse. Not to importune or otherwise criticize anyone who might have been involved in those specifications. So you're welcome. So this is what we need to worry about, but also migration, right? The versioning over time and the replacement over time of agents is going to become very important. And because, or if we really go for that strongly bound identifier with client ID metadata documents, it's going to make it harder, I believe, to move to new versions. And I will leave it at that, so we have a little bit of time to talk. Hopefully that wasn't too fast. Any comments, thoughts?
We got George.
George.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. So I'm struggling a little bit because I feel like there are a number of different spaces in this sort of AI agent problem or whatever. There's the discovery problem, like how do I find what agents are out there that can do something? There's a trust problem of, okay, I found the agent, but is it something that I can trust? Now these are largely cross-domain kinds of scenarios. So again, but in the first example, in Macy's thing, he was talking about cross-domain scenarios. I do think in the enterprise space, relationships, as you said, Pam, are more predefined and they're more established. So you could leverage SCIM, but it doesn't solve that sort of dynamic, hey, I just walked into this room and agents are multicasting DNS that they're present, and I'm going to go find one of them to do something, right? So there's that side of it. And then I think the authorization aspects of this as to what that agent can do from an authorization perspective are, SCIM is really powerful in that regards, and we don't have a good way to represent that in other options. So I think that that's valuable. I do think we'll get into the problems of, I think we're going to need instance identifiers for LLMs, and that doesn't really fit very well with sort of the construct of a more class-oriented registration in SCIM. So there's probably some things there, but it would be useful, at least for me, to figure out what piece of this overall space are we trying to tackle with the SCIM implementation for agents.
Right. I mean, my perspective on this, hopefully other people have thoughts too, but I think there's a couple of things, right? That one of them is the separation of registration, registration time from execution time, right? I think that's something SCIM is good at, especially, and because there is a latency issue with trying to register at the same time you're trying to ask for an access token, right? That is a burden that gets put on a server that's handling a lot of requests that could be problematic, doesn't have to be problematic, right? So I think that's one of the concerns. But the other one is obviously the unauthenticated smashing of an endpoint, whether that's the register endpoint, whether that's the authorization request endpoint, or in theory, there's no reason you couldn't have an unauthenticated SCIM endpoint to also try to do creates against. But like that problem exists, and that problem I think might also inform exactly the questions you're talking about, George. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I know that's only a small piece of what you were talking about.
No, appreciate it. Thank you.
Roberta.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Roberta. I'm a researcher from University from Brazil.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm also with the MCP group that it's trying. Yeah, I just started over there as well, but I'm getting into some of the issues. I have kind of two questions. One is this might seem close to an issue that we have with tooling, which is kind of the tooling registry. And this made me think about the extensions of SCIM would be also maybe applicable for the tooling itself, because we don't have a way to make like the links of when a tool is altered, when that the part of the governance of the tooling is kind of one of the things that it's being discussed, I think, still discussed. And the other thing is that one of the things that MCP has as an issue that I wanted to kind of see how maybe SCIM could help is that you cannot see after one node, so you will check multiple nodes. So you go to the first one, then the first will call the second one to use another tooling or another agent, and this will go forth. And then it's kind of a telescopic kind of encapsulation of federations. How that would be governed by, for example, this example? Is it covered by the aspect of the identity in this case, like for the first server being able to see what happened in the last one?
So I think it's possible to do. I know nesting has been an interesting conversation we've had in the community. I don't know if I think it's an implementation.
Yeah.
In the spec, it's possible. In implementations, I think people have found they have to set a limit. And so I don't know if that's helpful. Others.
It is actually.
Yeah, others here have probably more scars for that than.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm at 1 minute. So
We have a few extra minutes.
Well,
Yeah, we need 10. So we have a few minutes.
Go, Justin, go.
Hi, Justin Richer. So one of the things that is interesting to me here is that this is not the first time that SCIM has been applied or attempted to be applied to OAuth client registration, of course. But this seems to sort of almost conflate agents and OAuth clients. And is this only the OAuth client aspect of an agent, or are there other bits of agents that this is going to need to deal with, or like what is
Maybe
the
tools.
scope of reach?
Right. I think it's to be discussed.
Okay.
Yeah. The one thing, because I know I'm out of time, the one other thing is that this specification does not try to set a schema. The assumption here is that the schema is going to be set at a higher level and will have to be applicable both to OAuth and to SCIM and others.
Hi, this is Peter from Huawei. So my question is, how frequent would this record be updated? What is the typical lifespan of this kind of record? So is that gonna be always the long-term, services that's gonna be available, or there's gonna be, ephemeral agents that's gonna spawn in workflows?
So this just defines the interface. So it is a question of implementation. The endpoint, right, the slash agentic identities endpoint would always be available. And it would be a question of the client and the server negotiating when things are created or updated. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a performance question at some point, right? So, okay. And are we good? Should I get out of the way?
Yeah, we have 13 minutes left for a 10-minute session, so we're good.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks. Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, Prithvi, are you on?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes. We're bringing up your deck, and you should read your mail about the registration, by the way. But you're on, which is good.
Yeah. I'm glad we are past that. Hey guys, good morning. I'm Prithvi Reddy, author of the draft. This work addresses a challenge many of us face in IAM and IGA integrations. SCIM 2.0 handles identity provisioning well. It creates users, manages groups, and capture global roles like administrator or auditor. But as organizations scale, governance isn't just about who exists in a system. It's about who holds what roles inside which resource. I was working with few applications where I encountered this. For example, GitLab, a user might be maintainer in one project, developer in another, and an admin in a third project. Each project is a distinct access boundary. SCIM today can't express those pre-project distinctions. It's limited to global attributes. So implementers are working around it. This draft proposes a focused extension, a role assignment resource that represents who has what role in what context using a scalable interoperable schema. Next, please.
You have the.
Oh, I have. Thank you. Let's look at what SCIM gives us today. We have user object, has roles and entitlements around it that describes high-level access labels, but they apply globally, not to any specific resource, like a project or a tenant. There's no schema element that ties a role to its resource context. So implementers are working around by creating groups of each project role. Others embed scope names into strings like maintainer -project123. These tricks work locally, but break down at scale or across vendors. What we need is simple, a standard way to express who has what roles and where that role applies. That's exactly what this role assignment does. The draft introduces a new SCIM resource called role assignment. It captures who holds what roles and where that role applies. The schema has four main parts: subject, a user, group, or a service account; scope, the resource context, like a project, tenant, application, or environment; role, the access level, could be admin, maintainer, developer, viewer; and a metadata information like lifecycle information, validity dates, computed status, priority for conflict resolution, and source tracking. Each role assignment is a standard SCIM resource that can be created, updated, queried, or deleted independently. This makes role management scalable, also auditable. For example, an IAM platform can query get role assignments, put a filter on scope value equals to project 123, and instantly see everybody who has access to that project and their roles. Or they can query by subject and see a user across multiple scopes. This model stays true to the SCIM design principles, which are resource-based and RESTful and lightweight, but adds this missing layer of contextual authorization. Before wrapping up, let me connect this to some earlier SCIM efforts. The role and entitlement extension draft led by Solan and others defined catalog resources, roles, and entitlements. The draft lets SCIM services advertise what roles exist in a standardized way. Role assignment takes the next step. Instead of describing roles themselves, it defines the binding. Who has which role in which context? Think of it in layers. The earlier draft covered discovery and definition, while this draft adds assignment and lifecycle. Together, it creates a complete model: discovery, definition, and assignment. Technically, if both are implemented, a role assignment, a role ref can point directly to a /roles catalog resource. This works seamlessly together. This draft is complementary, not overlapping. It builds on earlier thinking, but focuses on something immediately implementable in today's IAM and IGA systems. A few design choices like worth highlighting. First, I made this a standalone resource rather than extending user.roles. This keeps role binding independent. You can query, audit, and manage them without touching user records at scale. Second, the immutability model. The core binding, who, what, where, is immutable. If you need to change user's role from developer to maintainer, you create a new assignment and revoke the old one. This creates a clean audit trail and prevents assignment drift. But lifecycle metadata like validity windows and priority can be updated. For example, extending a temporary assignment or adjusting priority when policies change. Status is always computed on the server side. So active, expired, suspended means the same thing across all SCIM implementations. And priority solves the real world problem of overlapping assignments. When someone has multiple roles in the same scope, higher priority wins. No need for vendor specific tie breaks. So that brings to the next steps. The role assignment draft defines the missing piece in SCIM, a standard way to represent who has what roles and where that role applies. I'm especially interested in feedback on 3 areas. Does the subject scope role structure fit cleanly with the SCIM's existing model? Are the lifecycle fields like validity, status, priority sufficient for real-time governance use cases, or do we need more? For larger deployments, Is the proposed filtering and pagination approach performant and scalable enough? I'll incorporate feedback from this discussion in the next version.
Great, thanks. Let's take the queue really quick. Elliot?
Okay, I'll be absolutely brief. Please don't forget about devices. So I realize that this is focused on users. Same
Yes.
comment as the previous draft. Like, we don't want to have to redo the same sort of mechanisms for devices. Let's do one pass on this.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Max.
Hi, Max. How does a SCIM client understand the set of available scopes and then which scopes are applicable to which roles?
So it's the same that we are like doing existing. So you can actually do /roles and could able to view all the existing roles. And all we are doing is like assignment of those roles. So instead of global role assignments, let's say if you have any project specific or tenant specific assignments, so what you can do is you can actually query them to see what you already have, or what are the existing roles that are available. Those things are already built in the SCIM specification. You could actually fetch those roles. All we are doing is when someone requests an access to, hey, I want to be a owner of this project in GitLab. When you request for that, the system would actually look at all the roles that are available and what are all the projects or resources that are available, and then it maps in and then write a call back to the system. So that's how I'm envisioning. So this is we are not reinventing here. Using the existing /roles, you could actually get all the roles that are actually inside the system. All we are doing is like, how are we going to assign and bind them when we are persisting into the target system.
So for GitLab, the projects would also be a SCIM resource that will be available?
That's the idea.
Okay, thank you.
It's Wakas. Just trying to double check on one. Right. So it's Wakas. Hello, everyone. I wanted to double check if I read it right. There seems like there is a temporal element, audit logs, and tracking that. Does SCIM designed to basically handle that part? Wouldn't it be too complex to manage that at scale?
So this is more on the server side. Like all we are providing is lifecycle event information to an IAM or IGA platform. And what that platform does is up to it. This schema just extends. So those information can be seamlessly sent to IAM, IGA platforms.
Great. Thanks. I think there's no more questions in the queue. I'm going to mute you. Sorry, since you're causing feedback. Please use headphones next time. Yeah, so it sounds like we have some interest. There's definitely interest in this work, but we need to kind of combine forces and have the editors work with each other on the respective docs.
Yeah, I mean, I was reviewing the charter, and I think since we added the support for the devices, we can consider, and I'm looking at our esteemed AD. I do think it's within the charter, but I think we need to have discussion with a crisp estimate. I've been watching the chatter in the chat. Sorry, Deb, get up on a chair.
No, I know how to fix this.
There you go.
So I'm Deb Cooley. I'm the SEC AD for this group. I do think it's time for a charter discussion. If you read the charter, all the things you said you were going to do first, we haven't done yet. And that's updating the old drafts, right? So I also do think that those are a little long in the tooth, and they probably do need to be updated.
I mean, we sort of worked on the update vis-a-vis, and so this gets back to the use cases, which we
That
haven't gotten a
definitely needs to be
whole lot
updated.
of feedback on, but the use cases did start talking about the the SaaS aspect, but from a human perspective.
Right.
So we could sort of open it up that way. We could recharter if
Well-
there is interest in the group. I'm looking to you.
I think you need to recharter. I think you have interest, right? You've had.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got questions about the device draft in terms of whether it was in charter or not. And I pointed to the phrase that said, and other things that are implemented sort of things.
Right.
Like there's little loopy doops in the charter that lets you,
but not for this one.
no, I don't think so. I think you do need to recharter. And I do think you
Okay.
need to really think hard about whether it's time to update the base specs. Because there has been an attempt to sort of update by errata, and that doesn't.
Right. Well, the roles is supposed to be one of those updates.
It is.
So,
but all three of them I think need to
so
go.
thank you for, I can't pronounce his name, Umesh, for taking that on,
Yeah.
right? So we can continue on that. I would say let's take it to the mail list as to, so there's definite interest, but I'm not seeing alignment on what it is, given that there's two similar drafts, but
Right, but if
listening
somebody
to,
wants work progressed, then one should possibly help with the base specs.
exactly. Ooh, that's a way to get volunteers. I like that. So if those who are interested in working on this, you also have to sign up to help us update the base drafts. I like that. So I think we're out of time, right? So we are out of time. I appreciate everybody staying, long. Let's continue the discussion on the mail list, both for what I heard was, there is interest, but I think we need, as the chairs, we need to see what the alignment on that interest is. And then we'll also need to get volunteers to help us with the deficiencies, or not really deficiencies, but really updating the base drafts. Right. Okay. So with that, thank you everybody, and have a good rest of the week because today's hump day.